Talk some LSU football. So Bill Connelly over at ESPN, he's at it again with his computer. Of course, Bill Connelly, father of the S&P Plus, and he puts out a lot of different pieces with analytics and whatnot. And look, I'll spare you a lot of the numbers that went into this piece, but ultimately what he was looking at is something that he calls the luck index for 2025. And he uses it to try and predict turnarounds from one year to the next in college football. And it really focuses in on a couple three key aspects in general: turnover luck, close games luck, injuries, and general shuffling. LSU, while as much as many around here might think they need to turn it around, LSU's not really into a full turnaround from 24 to 25. You won 9 games. Did you want to lose 4? Of course not. But even though LSU didn't factor into like turnaround candidate out of this piece of Connelly, they were mentioned quite often. And what I really want to look at is, was it bad luck that cost LSU games a year ago? Or were they just not good enough in certain spots of the game? Was it decision making? Was it poor execution? Things of that nature. Or did the ball just really not bounce LSU's way in a couple key moments in games that got away from them? Is it better to be lucky or good? Because look, we talk about it all the time. How often have you heard this phrase? Well, if a team's going to make a deep run or if a team's going to win a championship, they got to win one they're not supposed to win. It's a cliche, but it's also true. You can go back to any championship team or any team that made a good run. They got some good fortune along the way. And when I really looked at this piece from Bill Connelly, and I went back and kind of dove back into some of the key games in LSU season, they won some, they lost some. But it was really hard for me to figure out if luck had anything to do with it. LSU, based off of Bill Connelly's metrics and his, computer and the science he uses to analyze college football, LSU had bad turnover luck a year ago. They did. In fact, turnover luck is comprised of expected turnover margin, your actual turnover margin, and the difference between them. LSU ranked 117th. Again, we'll leave the numbers kind of there. Their difference was negative or minus 5.5 turnovers. So by the metric, they had bad turnover luck. But did they really? I can't really go back and think off the top of my head of the turnovers that LSU committed last year that I looked at it and went, man, that was a bad break. The ball was tipped up into the air and it was intercepted. Oh, man, the receiver was kind of trying to gain control of the ball, ended up taking enough steps, fumbled it away. Like, that'd be bad luck, right? In fact, LSU, in games they won, and even some they didn't, had good turnover luck. The other thing where LSU is mentioned, and we'll dive back into that because I want to combine them, was the close games. LSU was 9-4 a season ago. They were 3-1 in one-score games. Connelly uses this thing called the second-order win total. Okay? What he does is after each game's over, he combines or compiles, I should say, the post-game win expectancy. That's a nice way to see how many games a team should have won. It works. It's reliable for him. LSU, in win expectancy difference, so factoring in their close games, finished 19th. They were 9-4. Their second-order win total was 7.9. So really, you were right where you needed to be. You won one more game, in essence. You were plus 1.1. 3-1 in the close games. In those close games, you got good turnover luck. we'll start with South Carolina. South Carolina game, you had 2 interceptions taken off the board late in that game that would have iced it for the Gamecocks. The play Lenora Sellers got hurt on, and that was the biggest factor in that game in general, was Lenora Sellers getting injured. But the play he got hurt on was a sack fumble that you recovered and got a field goal out of. LSU was positive in the turnover margin in that game. You had phenomenal turnover luck in that game, where statistically, Bill Connelly's numbers would show you had bad turnover luck over the course of the season. But you won that one, and it was a one-score game. Against Ole Miss, it was an even turnover margin in that game. LSU had very good turnover luck. You forced the fumble right before the half. You get a field goal out of that. There was some bad there, too. Remember, Ole Miss misses a chip shot, 32-yard field goal. Garrett Nussmeier 2 plays later throws an interception, but your defense stopped them on that ensuing drive. And the turnover, the interception wasn't bad luck. He threw up a 50-50 ball, kind of overthrew his receiver, and it was picked off. It was just poor execution. LSU lost the turnover margin in the bowl game and beat Baylor by multiple scores. LSU won the turnover margin in Gainesville and lost that game. And then there's, of course, the two that everyone's going to look at, A&M and Alabama. And we'll start with A&M because what the turnovers did for you in that game or worked against you in that game is you set A&M up with short fields. But again, it wasn't bad luck. It was bad decision and bad execution. Nussmeier threw the ball out of bounds instead of trying to force it. Pick, 26-yard field or whatever. Or 8-yard field on that one. The other one was like 26 yards. When he tries to throw across the sideline, when it gets interception. You couldn't stop Marcel Reed in that ball game. Yeah, you set him up with short fields, and that's good. But that was your own doing. It wasn't a tipped pass or anything like that. Against Alabama, you were down 3 scores in the blink of an eye before you even started turning the football over. Alabama could have started every drive on their own one and still dominated you in that football game. You gave them really one short field on a turnover, and also you turned the ball over once in the red zone. That was the interception from Nuss when you were about to score. I rehash all of that to say LSU didn't have bad luck last year. LSU wasn't unlucky. LSU just wasn't good enough. And in fact, they were lucky, in my opinion, more often than not. Numbers in this analytical, experiment be damned. You tell me you aren't lucky in South Carolina to an extent, and against Ole Miss on your home field to an extent. The other one-score game we didn't go through was USC. You had one turnover in the game as the last play of the game. It didn't really matter. You couldn't run the football in short yardage. That tells me, and there's an instance, sure, where it is better to be lucky than good. It wasn't LSU's problem last year. And that's why when you look at some of these metrics that he's using to project next year, they don't factor in for LSU. Would you like LSU to be better in turnover margin? Yeah, that's important. Like, that is important. But I can't really point to one game outside of Texas A&M where you can even look at it and go, turnovers cost you in that football game. And even that's pushing it because you couldn't stop Marcel Reed. You weren't talented enough. You've gone and addressed that. Teams need luck. Sure, especially if you're going to make a deep run. You need the bounces to go your way every now and then. But it is 100% better to be good than lucky. Because luck runs out. Talent, execution, coaching, none of that stuff runs out. And that's where you can look at this and say, okay, yeah, you know what? LSU was pretty darn good in the win expectancy differential. Maybe that dips a little bit this year. And you open with Clemson, that's going to be a tough one. But I would look at it and say, LSU went out and has the number one transfer portal class. They might be about to add A.J. Halsey to just strengthen their hold on that. Brian Kelly's finally got the coaching staff where he wants it. This is a golden opportunity. You should be better this year because you're more talented and you have more continuity on the staff. Luck shouldn't have anything to do with it. You should be able to make your own luck. That's why when I look at this and I say, okay, well, is LSU actually headed for a downturn? No. Statistics aren't everything. They're really important, but they're not everything. LSU, on the surface, on paper, has made the necessary adjustments to their team, whether that be personnel or coaches and coaches. That luck should not factor in too much for LSU. You're either going to go out there and execute or you're not. And I feel extremely confident in saying that because that's what happened to them last year too. South Carolina is the only game I'm willing to give you on luck. Everything else was called back because of penalties or it was poor execution. That's what you're hoping to fix this year. And you're hoping the talent that you've brought in and the coaching staff that you've assembled leads to that. And if it does, LSU should be in the college football playoff, and then we'll see what kind of run they can make. Luck ain't got nothing to do with it. Go out there and play football. Execute, win games. That's what carries you, not luck.
Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.